Good old Disney, the big mouse company of beautiful animation and homophobia, apparently. Disney has been around for a very long time, and as a company has evolved greatly over the past few years, having several eras and ages spanning from the Golden Age to the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, my personal favorite, the Disney Renaissance, the post-Disney Renaissance era, and the current era, the Revival era, which mostly consists of 3D animated films entirely. But something I feel like is often overlooked about Disney is its shows. And no, I'm not talking about Disney Plus, I mean the OG Disney Channel shows, the cable shows, the ones where you would have to watch as soon as they aired, or you would have to wait a whole nother week just for the reruns, and you couldn't screen record it on TV or anything because that didn't exist back then. Those were definitely rough times. Yeah, you probably know what I'm talking about. The Kim Possibles, the Phineas and Ferbs, and the Proud Families, and the Fish Hooks, and the Jake Longs, and yeah. Most of their stuff was live action at the time, I'm not gonna lie. But the most important thing is they had some absolute fire animated shows whenever they did manage to push them out, for the most part. But out of all of these shows, the 2010s gave us something special with the likes of Gravity Falls, Wander Over Yonder, and just recently with the Ghost of Molly McGee, Amphibia, and the modern Disney masterpiece itself. So, I watched The Owl House recently, and I honestly did not expect this show to be as good as it was. Going in, my first few reactions to the first few episodes was all like, this is pretty nice. This is a cool little show, you know, about wishes and magic and dragons and, and witches and magic and... Yeah, this series literally broke me. Everything about this series is so comprehensive and tightly written that I almost forgot how homophobic Disney was. Supposedly, which is quite the feat. So the story of the Owl House begins with Luz Nocera, a Dominican girl living in the most boring state imaginable, Connecticut. She's a 14-year-old girl who does most normal kid stuff, but most importantly, she's a big fucking nerd. So naturally, because of that, she doesn't really fit in at school, and her interests are often misunderstood. So she's sent off to summer camp to make some new friends, amongst other things like sell cookies. But somehow she winds up following an owl into an interdimension portal, leading her to a magical realm called the Boiling Isles, a place of wizards, witches, magic, and whatever the fuck this thing is. In the Isles, Luz meets a witch named Ida the Owl Lady and her other companions King the Demon and Hootie, the most annoyingly enjoyable character I've ever seen on television. And he is the literal Owl House. And of course Luz's main goal is to get back home, but because she's a nerd, like I mentioned earlier, she geeks out over this and stays for a while, thinking it'll be all sunshine and rainbows, just like in her favorite book. But no, it's not. This place is ass. It's a place filled with rats, toxins, unknown dangers, and a whole lot of weirdos. And I thought to myself, yo, this is just New York. And I like how the series instantly showcases a sense of realism within the Boiling Isles. Luz is immediately flung into the magical world and is not afraid to show how real things can get when you're not careful. Like, yes, this place is literal shit and it's not afraid to kill you at all. Obviously, Luz is disappointed by this, but Ida gives her a much needed lesson about how destinies aren't predetermined and you get to choose your own. Throughout season 1, it's mostly Luz learning the ropes of the world and how it works. But amongst all that, it carefully weaves in character introduction / setup and in-depth arcs for characters along with it. Since Luz is a human, she can't really use magic because she doesn't have this weird little magical tumor in her heart. So in order to not be a bum, she makes up for it by creating magical glyphs and attending school. And her slow progression towards becoming an independent witch and the evolution of her glyphs is the core aspect of her character throughout season 1. And it's nice to see that going into witch school wasn't the first priority on Luz's list. She has to sorta kinda ease through it slowly throughout the series. And due to the status of Ida having 5 GTA stars in the Boiling Isles and Luz being banned from school before she even gets the chance to apply, it takes well over a few episodes before she's even an official student. But the very minute she enters that classroom, this is where things really start to get good, because we're introduced to the main core cast of witches, being Willow, Gus, and Amity. And I feel like I can't praise this show enough when I say just about every single character within the Owl House feels vividly in depth and alive. Yeah, even the characters I hate. Everyone is constantly doing something or developing individually or in unison with another character. Willow and Amity's dynamic is slowly set up here as one of superiority versus inferiority. Willow being the meek, timid witch that never feels like she's good enough because her plant magic doesn't allow her to excel, and Amity being the stereotypical bully in the situation, belittling Willow at every chance she gets. And we all know if you start telling someone something long enough, they'll eventually start to believe it. Amity's words getting into Willow's mind and doubting her self-worth is perfect setup for where both of their arcs will go later. Gus also parallels Willow and Luz via insecurities, but his stem from a lack of attention in general rather than being made fun of for it. And not just because he has illusionist magic, but because Gus's biggest enemy is quite literally himself. Luz's journey about finding her true purpose not only as a person but also as a witch is explored through the trials she faces and puts herself through. Her worth is constantly put to the test as she tries to adapt to this new world she finds herself in. She's an optimist to the core, but she still has her own sets of various insecurities. With Ida having a curse that turns her into an owl beast when she doesn't drink a special potion, Luz often feels directly responsible for not helping her when she needs to be. And for someone who is outwardly optimistic, Luz surely blames herself a lot. She just like me for real. And her being the direct apprentice of Ida, she's eager to learn more about magic. So her creating glyphs directly plays into her creative sense of imagination and how a creative mind can be beneficial in many cases, even going on to show Ida how to use glyphs herself at a later point in time. But more on that later. Luz, Ida, and Kane go to an annual convention, which is pretty much what you expect from a con of this type. There's furries everywhere, but this place isn't just a normal con event, it's also a big setup for deep world building, because here we're introduced to the main covens of the series. A coven being a system of magic or a collective group of people who use magic cultivated by Emperor Belos that are bound together by a sigil that'll only allow you to cast one type of magic out of the 9 existing ones for the rest of your entire life. Which sounds kind of boring to be honest, because like, who the fuck would want to use one kind of magic? That's kind of fucking lame. Bard, Abomination, Beastkeeping, Construction, Healing, Illusionist, Plant, Potions, and the most important, the Emperor's Coven, which is the only one that allows you to use all sets of magic without restriction. Or being covenless, or without a coven like Ida is the equivalent of committing mass murder in the Boiling Isles apparently, so it's always best to be assigned one. Think of it like selling your soul to the devil, but slightly less demanding and terrifying, or getting a tattoo that gives you superpowers, or a magical dictatorship perhaps, witch racism, if you will. Amity challenges Luz to a witch's duel, and there we meet Amity's teacher Lilith, who is Ida's sister, and their sisterly dynamic is set up from this point forward. Lily wants Ida to join a coven like her, and she's all like, Ida, come join a coven, we'll truly be sisters once more. But Ida is all like, sheesh. Nah. So of course they fight immediately. And let me take a moment of silence to stop here and say, yo, why is my animation so good? How animation is so animated? Why is that animation so good, man? I need to know why it's so fluid. Yo, good. Look at this animation go. Oh my god. Yeah, the animation in this show is pretty amazing. There's several scenes and fights and other instances where the animation quality just shoots up and you're left in awe as you watch these characters beat the absolute shit out of each other. And you rarely find this much animated fluidity out of most Disney shows. And I appreciate the time and care put into every aspect of this series. But yeah, Lily and Amity both lose and they go home in shame. This whole scenario not only sets up Lily's arc about delving into jealousy and how that affects her sister, but it also sets up her dynamic with Ida in the present, as well as her ties with Emperor Belos and how she plans to cure Ida of the Owlbeast curse. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist to take one look at this guy and go, yeah, this guy is definitely evil. Along with setting up Luz trying to befriend Amity, we find out that a lot of her traits of bullying and superiority come from the household. Being from a rich family and the youngest child, Amity is filled with expectations, with a mother that's hard on her and probably sees her as just another means to boost her own status in the hierarchy, and a father that neglected her for most of her life whilst getting verbally abused himself. She had to give up pretty much being a kid just for the sake of her family, which fucking sucks. And that's another reason I respect the writing of the Owl House, because they truly slow down and take their time, giving these heavy-hitting moments time to breathe. They don't interrupt a sad backstory or a serious topic with an unfitting joke that'll lessen the tension. They just give you the whole package, leaving you staring at your screen wanting to hug everybody in it. Anyways, later down the season we get so much setup and exploration for what's to come. We find out that Willow and Amity actually had a friendly past together but drifted away from each other as responsibility and family intervention got involved, leading into Willow bottling up her emotions and inner psyche hating not only Amity but herself. Or when Luz goes to Grom Night, where we're shown the skepticism of Luz telling her mother where she actually is, and where we get the single most beautiful moment in the entire show, where Luz and Amity dance to defeat Grom, not only symbolizing how they've grown to trust each other, but also displaying how gradually their mutual and romantic undertones of their relationship has evolved. Yeah, these guys are hella gay, and me personally, I love every single bit of that. Luz and Amity's relationship is handled with so much care and detail, slowly building up to their liking of each other through small and grand acts, showing how much they admire each other from afar, little gestures they do here and there to get each other to blush, or how much their actions directly affect one another. All of this is built up expertly into what then would become a beautiful and healthy relationship. But more on that later, because Lilith is still ass. In the last 2 episodes of the season, Luz and her class go on a class trip to the Emperor's Coven, so Luz sneaks around to find a cure for Ida's Owlbeast curse, where we learn how Emperor Belos Bellows keeps his power by sucking the magic out of Palisman, Luz eventually being caught by them and used as a hostage to bait Ida into coming to the Emperor's Coven. And it works because Ida comes not even a nanosecond later and beats the shit out of Lily for threatening her student. But just when I thought things couldn't get worse, we find out that Lily was the one that put the Albies curse on Ida, and that single moment right there was what solidified my hatred for Lilith. But despite that, I do respect her writing as a character. She's easily influenced by power and the concept of being the best at something. She previously respected Ida as her equal, but only one of them could get into the Emperor's Coven, so she put a curse on her to deplete her chances. And it worked, but now she regrets it because it backfired in her face and she still wants Ida to join a coven. Her character arc is one of desperation and greed, and how the effects of that can lead to unsatisfactory expectations. Lily is truly a tragic character and I feel for her completely. But I personally wouldn't let that happen to me though. I'm just saying. But yeah, Lily and Ida fight over Luz, and can I take another moment of silence to say, this animation is so fucking beautiful. Every time I see it, I am going to bring it up. I am so sorry. Sadly though, good things can't last forever because Ida uses up all her magic protecting Luz and transforms into the Albies, where she's going to get petrified for her crimes against the Isles. But Lily betrays the Emperor for lying to her along with Luz as they save Ida. And I gotta say, this season was very satisfying, but also very stressful. Luz gave Bellows the portal to the human realm but ends up destroying it with a glyph, meaning she has no way to get back home, and Lily, in attempts of redeeming herself, takes on half of Ida's curse into her body, and the finale really drives in and makes you feel for these long-lasting stakes. Ida losing her magic, Luz having no way back home, and Lily taking down the Albies are all stepping stones that were naturally built up to the season finale and will continue to grow in the next season. Though season 1 did have a few setbacks because there were a few episodes here and there that did take a while to take off and didn't really contribute to the plot all too much. But the second half of the season more than enough makes up for it and works very well as pretty good setup. But if season 1 was babies for 7 out of 10, season 2 takes that and flips it on its head. And it's maybe because I'm biased, but season 2 of the Owl House is probably some of the best television I've ever seen. When season 2 starts, we directly see the effects of season 1 taking toll on the characters and the narrative. Ida's fame as the Owl Lady went down the drain, Lily is still a bum, and Luz is desperately trying to find a way back home with them struggling to make ends meet. We eventually delve deeper into Amity's relationship with her family and how verbally abusive and manipulative it can be, while also learning Emperor Bellows' plan to buy the Zabomatons from Amity's mother Odelia, giving him an army while also boosting Odelia's stocks in the process. But the most important aspect of this season are the new character introductions consisting of the antagonists who now play a semi-protagonistic role in what they do with pre-existing ones. Here we're introduced to the Golden Guard, Kikimora, Abomination Coven head Darius, Rain, the concept of a celestial deity named the Collector who is expertly foreshadowed throughout the show, and much more. But before all that, we get development for King. King for a majority of season 1 was kinda sort of a gaggish character. He knew how to take situations seriously and cared for his friends, but in terms of character growth, he was very stagnant. Ever since the series began, we never really knew what he truly was, but the whole time he believed he truly was a demon king. So he goes on an adventure with Midley to find the truth, only to find out that Ida was lying to him the whole time about him being a demon king since he was a child, just to make him happy, and not even she really knows what he is. They find King's missing horn and he regains his memories from his past very vividly, and of course King goes on a complete mental breakdown, questioning his purpose in life and his true identity, and that core aspect of his character is explored throughout the entirety of the next season, playing a huge role within the narrative later on. And I think that's where the Owl House excels at most. They take pre-existing characters that were just there to take up space within an already existing dynamic to another character and make them narratively important by giving them depth throughout the already existing elements that were only briefly taken seriously prior. And it does that with a lot of characters in season 2. With Ida and Lily, we meet their mother and father, having her mother try to help her daughter's curse but backhandedly making it worse, and Ida not having enough confidence to speak to her father due to their foggy relationship over the years. It delves more into their past together, showing how Ida, despite her very assertive personality, has grand insecurities and doubts as well. The story humanizes the two sisters more, and Lily eventually goes with her mother after she leaves to help out. Thank God. And at this point in time, Lily's redemption truly has grown on to me. But before they leave, Ida's mother Gwendolyn gives Luz some information about heading back into the human world, stating that Titan's blood is the key to realm traveling and there was another human in the Isles which we learn has the name of Philip. So Amity and Luz go to the library to find more information about it through the likes of a magical exposition mouse. During all that though, we get a lot of development for Luz and Amity's relationship. At this point in time, they're not a fully fledged couple, but are definitely in the process of getting there, because Amity slowly starts to notice how her behavior changes around Luz. She becomes more reckless but more confident within herself at the same time. So to express her growth independently and to showcase how she's now more comfortable with her identity, she dyes her hair, symbolizing a drastic point of change within her character, and even giving Luz a little kissy. A day or so later, Luz and the other witches aim to pick out Palisman for themselves, with everyone getting one but Luz. And this moment hits so unexpectedly hard for Luz as a character, because in order to get a Palisman, her very ideology is challenged when they ask her, "Why do you want to become a witch?" And she froze up. My guy has not moved in 40 minutes because she thought she was so certain of her her reasonings. Was it because she looked up to Ida? Was it because of the books she read or the magic she thought she would do through glyphs? And yet she didn't know, so she didn't receive a talisman. And she thought about it so hard she went to sleep in the talisman's nest where the Golden Guard snatched them all. And I think this is the perfect time to bring up that the Golden Guard and Emperor Belos have a very close relationship. They have an uncle and nephew figure type bond, but it's strictly manipulative and one-sided. Belos does everything in his power to use everyone and everything as an asset to benefit his own goals, while the Golden Guard himself, Hunter, just simply wants to prove himself and make his uncle proud. And he would do just about anything for his approval. Although he's not afraid to speak his mind on certain matters involving Belos' well-being, he is definitely very terrified of disappointing him, given he is from a long line of previous Golden Guards who have failed and have not had the best of luck when it comes to living. But Hunter meets Luz and they contrast each other very perfectly. They're not only polar opposites, but they share a lot of parallels as well. Luz always worries about living up to Ida and assisting her, where Hunter does the same for Belos. Luz is magicless without the use of an outside source of glyphs, and the same applies for Hunter with his staff. Luz has a lot of insecurities about her sense of self-worth, and likewise with Hunter. They are very much two sides of the same coin, and they are fighting for very similar goals. And if Lily was the queen of frustrating activity, Kikimora is the king of being utterly annoying at any moment possible. And if dick riding was a competition, she would come in 0th place because you would have to create an entire new metric system just because there's absolutely no one on the entirety of the Bowling Owls that sucks up to Belos more than she does. But anyways, in forming a truce with Luz, Hunter indirectly opens up his heart to development, making him slightly skeptical but very open to see the constant cracks in Belos' manipulation. And that was just up until episode 6 of season 2. Episode 7 on forward for me is what truly sprung the Owl House into the modern day masterpiece that it is, because the following set of episodes established so much so quickly, and somehow they managed to stick the landing on almost every single plot point. King, Luz, Amity, Willow, Gus, Ida, and even fucking Hootie of all characters get development that truly outclass the rest, with some of, if not all of my favorite episodes coming from the latter half of season 2, and that's definitely for good reason, with my top episodes being Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door, Ida's Requiem, Yesterday's Lie, and The Day of Unity. The character writing in these episodes are peak Owl House and managed to shock me in more ways than one, like with Ida's Requiem, an entire episode about, well, Ida, and how she's managing to cope with uselessness and loneliness after losing her magic. In Ida's Requiem, she overhears Luz and King talking about their goals and how they plan to leave Ida very soon to pursue them. So she goes to find an old friend of hers named Rain, who is a part of a Coven Freedoms Fighters group and hopes to take them down from the inside due to Rain being a Coven head themselves. But they get caught by the head of the Abomination Coven, Darius, who is the coolest character in the show, by the way. Just look at that drip. Oh my god. Just look at that drip. So them getting caught results in Ida doing what any logical person would in this situation and immediately tries to sacrifice herself so Rain could live on. But the thing that gets me about this scene is not only that she wanted to sacrifice herself for Rain, but she wanted to end it all because she felt that she had no other purpose in life if the only people she values are removed from it. She was literally going to kill herself simply because she thought that the two people she grew closest to were potentially going to leave her. She was a lost soul only hanging onto this life for the sake of others. And to top that scene off with some beautiful animation and music, this whole sequence is enough to make even the toughest of men cry. Yeah. This woman is very depressed. Not only does this episode do wonders for Ida's character and displays her growth, it addresses King's identity crisis as well. His goal was still to find his dad, but despite not knowing what he is or what he wants to be, he is almost satisfied enough of just being the one there to be with Ida for all of these years. So he accepts himself as king and changes his last names to Ida's, being Clawthorn, showing no matter how much shit they go through, he will always be there for Ida. Knock Knock Knocking on Hootie's Door is an episode I love above the rest because it takes a character as annoying as Hootie and not only makes him useful, but they make me absolutely love him beyond any human comprehension. Because this guy Hootie is absolutely amazing. Throughout season 1 and a lot of season 2, Hootie has been just the sentient house that would annoy me every single time he was on screen. And even the characters in the universe found him annoying. But in doing so, we find out how human Hootie actually is. A lot of his actions come off as annoying, but it's mostly because he is pretty lonely. He craves praise and attention, and a lot of the times he simply just wants a friend. His annoyances are usually never intentional, and he's always willing to help everyone within the Owl House, or within him, because you know they walk inside him, and he, you know, they live inside him, and You know what? I'm not going to question the logistics of how Hootie's insights work any further. I'm sorry. There's no other episode as perfect as this one when it comes to showcasing how important Hootie truly is, because everyone that lives within him has their own set of issues. Ida is still struggling with the Albies curse, Luz is struggling with asking out Amity, and King is still struggling with his sense of self and still is curious on what he actually is. And Hootie works as a perfect catalyst for all of these issues because he indirectly solves all of their problems while thinking he's just annoying everyone as usual in the process. He solves Ida's Albies problem by having Ida in a dreamlike state where she and the Albies form an agreement to coexist with each other. He solves Lumity's issue by creating a whole fucking love-based amusement park in his basement, which is basically his ass, just so he can get Luz to confidently ask out Amity. And he helps King to find out what he actually is, and it turns out he's a Titan, one of the most powerful beings in the Boiling Isles, making him unlock a new power in the process. And all of that was concluded because a sentient bird houseworm simply decided to be helpful that day. And I don't know what Donna and the team were smoking to produce this much heat, but I definitely need some of that. Yesterday's Lie is really no different, it being an episode about Luz and her finally getting back home. Sorta. With the research of Philip's notes and Titan's blood, they managed to create a temporary portal back to the human realm, but since they didn't have enough, Luz is kinda stuck between the realms, and she manages to get in contact with her mother, but not entirely how she'd planned. It turns out that a shape-shifting creature that goes by V replaced Luz while she was trapped in the Boiling Isles, and the whole episode is basically learning how bad of a life V had and her struggle with finding a place to belong, as well as getting Luz's mom Camila to believe all of this wacky shit she's seeing and being told. And at first I found it kinda weird because Camila was taking it surprisingly well. Like, if that were me and I saw something like this in real life, I'd probably be screaming my head off and would probably try to kill it immediately. But hey, maybe that's why Camila is a parent and not me. Oh my god, bro, I am not a good person. But what really hit me the most from this episode wasn't Camila finding out about V, or V being sad, it was the singular interaction between Luz and her mother. The slow somber music in the background as these two express how much they love and care for each other as it slowly turns into self-doubt and Camila feeling as if she failed as a mother, constantly blaming herself for driving her daughter away to this extent. They both cry and Luz tries to convince her mom that it isn't her fault, but before anything is said further, Luz makes one last promise to her mom that she would never leave her again as the temporary portal closes, leaving her mom alone as the episode ends. And this episode is emphasized even more in a later episode where Luz was acting strange all day because she misses her mom and can't do an annual ceremony for her father who has passed away. But after helping Amity build a closer relationship with her father and the fact that she loves and cares for Luz, she returned the favor by doing the ceremony there in the Isles with her. These two are so precious together and I never want to see them sad ever again. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I definitely cried real tears that night. And more tears are definitely going to come because that was just episode 10 of 21. The previous episode and the few after does a lot of exploration for Hunter and Belos as a character. The reason Luz was able to get Titan's blood in the first place was because Amity and Ida went to a lake within the Titan's knee where they ran into Hunter, also looking for the Titan's blood. He doesn't want to disappoint his good old Uncle Belos, so he threatens Luz in exchange for the key with the Titan's blood. Amity forks it over, but before giving it to Hunter, we see Hunter have a complete mental breakdown, just because the sheer thought of disappointing Belos. He was ready to stay there and die just to escape another failure. And I really love how Hunter as a character paralleled Amity here. He represents her past self before she met Luz, always feeling as if she was never good enough, constantly struggling to live up to expectation and becoming the image her mother wants her to be instead of truly expressing herself naturally. All of that is brought out through Hunter and Amity relates to that so she knows his pain. And Hunter can tell they've led similar experiences, but he's so deep in delusion that he doesn't let his emotion alter the priority of the mission, so he still takes the key and leaves. Hunter's journey to figuring out the truth and rediscovering himself is some of the best redemption I've seen in almost any animated show, and they really give it all of the time it deserves by having him constantly doubt the methods of Belos while recontextualizing all of his aspirations. They also build his character by giving him a proper father figure through Darius, who at first comes off as a snobby coven head guy, but is eventually a really great potential guide to Hunter, one that Hunter not only wanted, but needed due to the lack of bonding with Belos. The words of Darius even make Hunter take action himself to recruit new witches for the coven by joining the Hexside School, where he befriends Willow and Gus, joining their school sports team and eventually losing their trust because he was just using them for his cause. Hunter has never had friends before. Most of his life he's been trapped by the side of Belos doing whatever he asks, so he is socially awkward and environmentally ignorant, directly getting Willow and Gus imprisoned. And throughout all of this, Hunter was still trying to convince himself that he was still a good friend, that he was doing good for them and for himself, but he wasn't because they despised him immediately, and I don't really blame them. Hunter is such a brilliant character. Just about every scene he's in pushes something forward, character-wise or narrative-wise. He's just that essential of a character, but just like Hunter, so is Belos, because we find out soon that Belos is actually Philip, the human Luz was studying all those years ago that got trapped in the Boiling Boiling Isles. We learn about how he feels disdain for witches and sees them as savages, and how he plans to unionize the realms in a plan called the Day of Unity, where he pretty much eradicates all life within the Boiling Isles. His motivation perfectly reflects the time period he grew up in, being filled with superstitions, and made his goal even more justifiable when he was looked down upon for being a human in the Boiling Isles. In the process of all that though, we find out later on that Hunter is actually a Grimwalker, a clone of Philip's dead brother who he most likely killed himself, so Hunter's entire existence was cultivated by Belos, giving even more reason for Hunter to despise him. And when this was revealed, I was literally speechless, because I 100% did not expect that on my first viewing at all. This reveal was executed flawlessly, not only because this reveal messes with Luz's mental state, but because Luz was directly the cause of this entire plan being put into fruition. She went back into the past to find answers about Philip and the Titan, but in doing so it created a chain reaction leading to Philip betraying Luz after she helped him with the present day knowledge, directly assisting Philip in the past, resulting in him releasing the steps necessary to free the Collector and giving birth to what is now known as Emperor Belos. Time travel has always been confusing yet cool, but mix it with a cool ass reveal and some amazing writing and that's exactly what you get here. And maybe I am being a bit overdramatic, but I honestly can't get over how cool and detrimental that reveal was. And it all led up perfectly into the season finale, the Day of Unity. Before the depression kicks in though, King was in luck by stumbling upon an entire island with people that look exactly like him. They take him in, make him feel special and validated, give him advice on what it takes to be a true Titan, and it finally puts King at ease. But that didn't last long, because they weren't actually Titans, just Titan hunters disguised as Titans, and now they want to put King on a plate and serve him up with a side of fries so they can worship a god they summon called the Collector. People really ain't shit. But the saddest part is that King, after all of this time, still hasn't found his true purpose. All of this searching and traveling only for it to be fake for the second time, and I miss when King was happy. But as they get ready for the Day of Unity, we find out that Rain wasn't actually brainwashed and Darius were all a part of the Coven Freedom Fighters group, which they then call the Cats. And this finale does a lot of good despite Disney cutting the Owl House short. And honestly, I could make a longer singular video in itself of just this finale alone, but I'm going to break it down in a shorter manner just for my sanity. The team against the Day of Unity was aligned, a plan was formed, Amity confronts her shit mother about her creations to Emperor Belos, telling her that it's all in favor of a plan that will all end their lives very soon. Willow and Gus become valuable assets, Alador and King have a genuine talk about each other's failures in life and how they wish it would change if only they allowed it to change sooner, giving them both great development on acceptance and self-betterment. Kikimora finally gets some development, finally realizing how Belos was just using her as a pawn for his own gain. Belos betrays the Collector and doesn't free him. Luz and Ida have an argument about whether or not she should come, in a heartfelt moment showcasing how much Ida has grown to care for Luz in such a short time. We get more backstory for Ida and Rain's relationship, strengthening their bond and delving deeper into both sides of their sacrificial nature. The Day of Unity is put into play as everyone with a Covenant sigil is slowly getting killed by the alignment. King quickly befriends the Collector because he's quite literally a child. The Collector kills Belos, and immediately upon freeing the Collector, he destroys the entirety of the Boiling Isles, leaving King to send the kids off with one final goodbye, telling Luz how much he cares for her and loves her, making clear that even though he struggled with himself, he still sees her as his sister and does not regret meeting her one bit, telling Luz that meeting her was what truly gave him purpose. The kids then make it to the portal as the Isles are destroyed with no way back. All their friends and family left behind, regretting every single action they ever took until this moment. They cry and they feel hollow as they go to Luz's house, meeting her mother completely torn from the inside. And then the episode ends, leaving me staring at my black screen, seeing the reflection of myself with a single tear rolling down my face. That was fucking beautiful. Everything about that finale and this series as a whole screams care and passion, and you can feel that through every single bit within the story, the characters, the writing, the world building, the drama, the emotion, all cultivated perfectly to create the modern masterpiece that is the Owl House. The Owl House is really a special show, and if you haven't watched it yet, what are you doing with your life? Watch it right now, or there will be a pipe bomb in your mailbox next morning. That is not a request, that is a threat. Oh my god, watch this show for real, I'm serious.